Hello, everyone. My name is Harmony Difo. I'm with Publishers Weekly. Welcome to Books on Tap Live. Today, we're talking to Stephanie Yeboah, author of Fattily Ever After, A Black Fat Girl's Guide to Living Life Unapologetically. And this event is sponsored by Hardie Grant Publishing. We're also happy to announce that we're giving away a limited number of copies of her book. You can enter to win by going to publishersweekly.com/Yeboah. We've also dropped a link to the page in the comments section on Facebook and YouTube. And during the event, audience members can also ask questions by writing them in the comments section on Facebook and YouTube. And we'll try to answer as many questions as possible during the time. And as always, if you'd like to receive notifications of future events, please be sure to sign up at publishersweekly.com/booksontapelive. And now it is my pleasure and honor to introduce our lovely guest, Stephanie Yeboah. Hello and welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? You look great.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing well, thank you. Excited to be here.
Me too. I'm glad you're here. Happy to see you again. So to get started, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and just let us know your background, anything you want us to know while we introduce the book.
Yeah, sure. So I am, my name's Stephanie. I'm a 31-year-old from London, and I am a now published author, freelance journalist, content creator, and a bit of a sort of body positivity, body image activist as well. And I started in 2009 while in university. And the reason that I started my blog and this career is I was studying law at the time, and it was very academic, and I felt like I was kind of, I don't want to say pushed into doing it, but I was lightly encouraged by my parents to do an academic subject, coming from, you know, a West African family where they really push you to do academic subjects. And so as somebody that's always seen themselves as a creative, I felt a bit stifled in my degree. And so I started my blog in 2009 as a way to kind of be quite creative and spark something away from my studies. And so I started my blog, and I was talking predominantly about skincare and makeup and lifestyle and all of these things, even though my true love has always been fashion and style and things of that nature. However, I didn't start introducing sort of fashion and style until 2014, because I had always had a really big issue with how I looked and how people perceived me. I had really bad self-esteem issues and all of these things, and it kept me from doing what I truly wanted to do. So once I discovered the body positive community, I started documenting my journey on my blog, and that opened up the doors for me to start doing fashion. It opened up the doors for me to start doing some freelance writing and talking a lot about self-love, confidence, self-esteem. And once I found a really amazing community online of women who were going through the same thing and looking the same way I did, it helped me get a lot more confident, and it also allowed me the opportunity to help those who were going through the same thing as well. So yeah, fast forward a few years later and a few blog posts later, I had been able to sort of cultivate all of these experiences into what is now my first non-fiction book. And yeah, it's a bit about me.
That's great. I have seen your blog, and it's amazing and super inspiring. So we're super glad you're here and super proud of you about this book. It's amazing. So thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and what was your main inspiration? I know you went into a little bit about the blog, but what was your driving force behind this book?
Yeah, sure. So I first came across the body positive community around 2009, and I came across it on Tumblr, of all places. And I remember when I came across the movement in the beginning, it was synonymous with another movement called the Fat Acceptance Movement, which was a movement that was concentrated in celebrating bodies of all shapes and sizes, and sort of trying to reiterate to women that you don't have to hate yourself because you're bigger. And in these spaces, it was predominantly made up of larger plus size Black women. And in the US and the UK, we saw that these spaces were predominantly made up of Black women. And once I noticed around 2015 that the body positive community was starting to reach popularity, of course, you know, I thought it was amazing. You know, we thought this would be an amazing a standpoint for normalizing bigger bodies within the media and just in general. However, it became popular, and what we saw kind of happen before our eyes was we saw the kind of whitewashing of the movement. So publications and clothing brands started to adopt the body positive hashtag. However, instead of being inclusive and diverse in the bodies that they chose, they started or began using mostly white bodies and smaller body types as well, acceptable. So bodies that are still big, but bodies that would be a lot more acceptable within society than larger bodies. And it just became a fact that this movement that had become a safe space for so many unprivileged bodies had been sort of taken away from us, and it's almost been turned into this new beauty ideal, which is what I like to call like sexy curvy, which is, you know, curves that are synonymous with models such as Iskra Lawrence or Ashley Graham, models that are, you know, they're bigger than a size 6, but you know they're not too, you know, they're not too curvy. They're still deemed as socially attractive. And so, you know, I myself and other women had been seeing this happen for quite a while, and we were just like, okay, like where can we talk about our perspectives? Where can we talk about the things that affect us? Because all of the essays that we had been seeing and all of the visibility that we had been seeing had been coming through the perspectives of predominantly very attractive, privileged white women. And we didn't have a place where we could tell our stories. And so I thought, you know what, there needs to be some kind of literature, or there needs to be a book or a place online where plus size Black women specifically can come together and talk about the things that affect us and the way in which we navigate society, because the way in which we exist and navigate society is very different to the way in which everybody else navigates society, because we have the intersection of race and also, you know, if we were to take it a bit lower, colorism as well. And these are all things that hinder the way in which we navigate the world. And so I just thought, you know, considering we were the ones that kind of spearheaded the body positive movement and now we've kind of been marginalized from it, I'm going to write a book that kind of details all of our experiences and just, reminds us that we are beautiful and we are worthy, and worthy of love and respect.
Absolutely. I completely understand that. I think your research on the history of the Black female image and the Black plus size female image is so strong throughout the book, and I loved every minute of it. From Hattie McDaniels to Sarah Bartman, it's so thorough. Can you walk us through that history, kind of like a short, abridged version of that history, and how did you go about your research?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I thought it was, because this is an area that hasn't had a lot of, I guess, there's not a lot of work into it. I think with my book, it's the first book of its kind to kind of really focus on plus size Black bodies as opposed to general body positive books. There was a lot of research that I had to do because unfortunately, it hadn't been done previously. And so I was very aware of Sarah Bartman's case. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I became aware of it. And basically with Sarah Bartman, she was a South African lady. And she came from this tribe in South Africa where they were known for having really big bums, and also they had elongated vulvas as well. That was just a feature of their bodies, and it was seen as very normalized. And basically she was brought over to the UK and to France, where basically she was put in a human zoo. She was made to prostitute. She was put in this kind of freak show where people from, you know, around London and around the UK would come to see her. They would, she would be made to perform and act very animalistic and very feral against her will. They would often drug her or plough her with alcohol, so she didn't really know what she was doing. And people came to look at her bum and, you know, and to study it and to laugh at it and prod at it and, you know, do all of these really degrading, humiliating things to her because she looked different. And unfortunately, she died quite early. I think at the age of maybe, I think 23, she passed away. And even in death, her body wasn't given the dignity that it deserved. So as soon as she died, her body was almost mummified and put in a museum in France. And her genitalia was cut out and put as an exhibit in this museum in France. And she wasn't, her returns weren't sent back to South Africa until, I think, is it 2003, I believe, is when her remains were sent over, which I just thought was criminal, because it just shows the objectification of Black bodies, you know, has been going since slavery times. And the same with Hattie McDaniel. You know, she was the first Black person to win an Oscar, yet she wasn't even allowed to sit with the other nominees. You know, she had to come through another entrance, and you know, it was such a monumental time. But even then, like, she still wasn't given the same rights as everybody else. And, you know, after winning a role playing a maid, she was offered nothing but more maid roles in the future. And she kind of set the standard, you know, not intentionally, but she kind of set the standard for this mammy trope that we now have today. So, you know, since Gone with the Wind, we've seen so many kind of TV shows and movies within Hollywood where they often get plus size Black women to play the maternal, supportive, docile character. And yeah, it's just been a long standing trope, both in the UK and particularly in the States as well.
That was such a powerful chapter. I remember reading it very well. It was really well researched. I really appreciated it. On page 85, you said a quote about the body that I thought was really interesting. It says, fetishization is taking a full-fledged, well-rounded human and limiting them to one aspect of their being that they don't have any control over, which I thought was a really important definition to say in this book in particular. Can you talk a little bit about that? Super interesting.
Yeah, sure. So the thing is with I can never say the word. It's such a hard word to say. Fetishization. Okay. So with fetishization, oh, I mean, where to even begin? I think there are two aspects to it. And I really want to point out that there are some women, and talking within this realm, we're talking specifically about Black plus size women. There are some women who enjoy being fetishized. So it's not a case of me kink shaming or anything like that. There are some women who enjoy that aspect. There are some women that find it to be empowering. If they find it to be the only place where they are seen as beautiful and all of these things. So it's not to take away from those feelings of empowerment. But I think, you know, for a lot of plus size people and Black women, and then also when you combine it together, we do tend to get our fair share of being fetishized. And basically that's a case of people, predominantly men, seeing our bodies as nothing but objects. You know, they become, you know, hyper sexualized to a specific aspect of us and not actually seeing us as human beings. They don't see us as, you know, girlfriend material. They don't see us as people that have feelings and thoughts and emotions and perspectives and talents. They literally just see an empty vessel that they want to use, you know, however they please. And yeah, you know, we get fetishes of all sorts. You know, we often hear of like the common ones, so like foot fetishes and you know, Black fetishes and all of these kinds of things. And for the most part, these fetishes are always often rooted in some kind of power dynamic, I've noticed as well. And this is something that I'm still trying to kind of formulate in my brain, but for me, talking from personal experience, most of my life I have been fetishized, and it's always been fetishized by slimmer white men. And it's interesting because they always assume that, you know, some of the first things that they always say is, oh, you know, I'm assuming that you're very dominant or aggressive, and all of these really horrible stereotypical tropes that Black women have been it's all of these tropes that have been forced onto us due to things such as slavery and racism and colonization and all of these things. They always assume, because, you know, it's the Blackness that makes me aggressive, but then it's the fatness that makes me dominant because I'm physically bigger than them, and somehow they see that as a bit of a turn on. And to me, I just find it personally quite gross, because they're literally taking a body type and kind of putting their impressions and their stereotypical tropes on it without knowing who I am. And yeah, for me, I just think, and a lot of it is based on, you know, these kind of racial microaggressions about how they think Black women act or fat women act. And for me, I'm not with it, man. I don't like it at all.
Not with it. That's a really good way to put it. I'm just not with that.
Nah.
I was really impressed by your shedding light on eating disorders with regard to race and weight, and especially in the Black community. And you mentioned that kind of the prototype for bulimia or anorexia nervosa is kind of like this frail kind of, you know, the 90s waif model image, which is usually like white and female teenager with, you know, visible ribs or something like that. And you say on page 156 that Black teenagers are 50% times more likely than white teenagers to exhibit bulimic behavior. And I thought that was fascinating and really important to talk about, because obviously eating disorders are important across the board. But I really wanted you to address within the Black community what that means and what that means to you.
Yeah, when I found out about that statistic, so I had to do like a lot of research on that, and what you'll find in the book is that most of the stats that I've gotten are from the US, because in the UK, like, oh, they're virtually non-existent. It's like people don't really care about us here. Like, it's terrible. And so when I found those stats, and I was just like, I don't know, I found it quite it hurts, because it makes me feel like there is a standard of, again, this hurts me to say, but it does feel like there is a standard of beauty, even when we come to things as horrible and as you know, sad as eating disorders. Again, we look at the subject of eating disorders and we are seeing slim, white, you know, waif-looking women, and completely disregarding the fact that people of all sizes specifically, and people of all races, can suffer from eating disorders. And when I found out that statistic, it really just shocked me. I think I feel like there is a, what am I trying to say? There is this kind of belief that when it comes to body image, Black women, Black people, we supposedly have it a bit better. And I think the reason people think this is because, you know, when we think about the standard of beauty in each race, within the white society, it seems like being slim is the standard of beauty. Whereas when we talk about the Black community, for the most part, this is just a generalization, but being curvier is seen as, you know, that's our standard of beauty within our community, is being curvy, you know, big bum, big hips, big boobs, small waist, all of these things. So there is a degree, I think, of people assuming that because we are maybe more tolerant of bigger body types, that we do not have the same struggles with trying to fit in as everybody else. At the end of the day, even though there are different body types and different standards of beauty, we still unfortunately fall under the westernized standard of beauty, which is thinness. And so there are loads of Black women and Black men who feel that pressure to fit in with that standard of beauty. There are also so many other factors that can be attributed to wanting to people having eating disorders, you know, things such as just general things like trauma, you know, I say a lot, I really should stop that, it's such a bad habit. Things such as, yeah, so trauma, coming from like a really bad background, poverty, all of these things can contribute to eating disorders. And the fact that when we bring mental health into it as well, especially in the UK, mental health within the Black community is still so taboo. We are still told to go to church and pray it away, and that we shouldn't go to therapy, and going to therapy is still seen as a weakness within our community. And I feel like because we don't have that support when it comes to mental health or talking about our issues, it's easy to kind of slip into those habits of eating disorders. So yeah, I just think it's so important to have that visibility when it comes to things such as eating disorders and mental health, is that we are so grossly underrepresented within this field. And it shocks me that anytime I bring up these statistics, or I'm talking about the fact that, you know, Black people suffer from mental health issues too, or, you know, we also suffer from eating disorders too, or that fat people suffer from eating disorders too, people are always so shocked. And I just say it's because of how it's being represented. People only seem to care if it's packaged as a very, very slim, waif white woman. That's how it's always been portrayed in the media, movies, television. Anytime there's a storyline that revolves around eating disorders, it's always the same character, the same body type. And so it's so important that we have more research in these areas where it comes to people of color and Black people with eating disorders, because it is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really important to say. And obviously right now in 2020, there's a lot of discussion about, you know, representation matters. And yes, it does very much, but it's important to even narrow that down and say representation across everything matters. You know, it's not just within movies, TV, film, but it's in, you know, things like eating disorders and problems within society too. So I think that's really important. And I'm really glad that you addressed that. As we wind down, I suppose, how can our viewers and me and the world work to become like a better thin or body positive ally for your community?
Oh gosh, where can we start? So there are quite a few things. I think because it's such a, when we talk about fat phobia and weight stigma and the way in which plus size people are treated as a whole, it's so systemic. So there are so many ways in which allyship can happen. So if we take it from a systemic point of view, I think one thing that really needs to be changed is representation behind the scenes. Often within our community, we talk a lot about, you know, we don't see a lot of fat people on TV. And when we do, we are often seen as a monolith. We are seen as being lazy, unhealthy, stupid, dirty, unlucky in love, unlucky in our jobs, you know, all of these really negative stereotypes that are attributed to plus size people. And I think, you know, it's all well and good saying that we want more representations on the screen, because let's face it, when we talk about self-acceptance and self-love, one of the first places that we go to for that is TV. It is the media. They are so powerful. And so, like, for me growing up, I didn't have anybody that I felt I could relate to. And because of that, I thought I was the only one who kind of looked the way I did. And therefore I thought I was ugly. I thought I was hideous. I thought Black women and plus size Black women were too ugly to be seen on TV. And so I began to internalize that. And it wasn't until I got older that I, you know, heard about and started seeing people like Missy Elliott and seeing people like Monique on TV. That's when I started to actually feel like, oh, wow, like, she's amazing. She's dancing, she's rapping, she's like slaying. And then you've got Monique, who, you know, watching The Parkers was like my favorite show on TV as a teenager, because there was a plus size woman who was confident and amazing and gorgeous and funny. And that in turn made me feel like we could be those things too. So It's one thing to say, yeah, we need representation in front of the scenes, but behind the scenes is so important. I think if you're somebody with a platform or you have a position of power, it is important to really make your voice be heard. And it's important for workplaces, regardless of the field that you work in, to hire people who look different. And I would say, especially within places such as PR and marketing and casting and anywhere that controls what we see on TV, on billboards, all of these things, it's important to kind of have that diversity, because especially in those places, you often don't find a lot of Black people working there. For example, with me, before I became freelance, I worked at a marketing company and I was the only Black person there, and I was the only fat person there. And I worked in 2 marketing firms before that. And when I was put in control of working with influencers, for instance, I made sure that every single influencer that I worked with was Black, because I was just like, I'm working in this place, and because everybody else around me is white, that's their normal. So when they're looking to headhunt people, or they're looking to look for influencers or models or spokespeople or whatever the case may be, they're looking for people that are within their normal. So they're not automatically looking for somebody that is disabled, or somebody that is Black, or somebody that is Asian or Latino or trans or whatever the case may be. They're looking for people that look like them because that's all they know. So it's important to broaden that and actually go out of your way to hire and use people that can bring a perspective to your workplace, and also bring that the vision that they want to see. They want to see people that look like them broadcast everywhere. So for me, that's one thing I think that can be done, is in terms of just hiring and looking for people that offer a new perspective. Another thing I think is change the language, change the way that you speak about certain things. And I say this to somebody as, if you are slimmer or you reside in a body that has societal privilege, and you have a friend that is plus size, I think you just have to navigate it and be really, really careful, especially if that person has low confidence and low self-esteem. So for instance, if you're talking to them one day and you say something like, "Oh, I feel so fat," it's horrible. You don't say that in front of your plus size friend, because what you're essentially saying is, "Oh, I don't want to look like you because your body is disgusting." That's essentially what you're kind of saying. If you're kind of, fat isn't a feeling. It's literally like a physical thing. You can't feel fat. You can feel bloated, you can feel full, but you can't feel something that you're not, if that makes sense. Like, I can't say I feel skinny because I don't know what feeling skinny feels like. But there are just certain things that I think that you kind of have to take care in what you're saying. If you've noticed that your friend has lost weight or they've changed in any way, the worst thing I think to say is, "Oh my gosh, you look so good," because you don't know the reasons why that person has lost weight or changed. I remember in my case, I had a very bad eating disorder when I was younger, where I suffered from bulimia, and I started to lose weight, and people around me were encouraging that, but they didn't know that I had an eating disorder. And what they were doing is they were validating all of the terrible things I was doing to my body. Like, I was starving myself and taking really extreme dieting pills, and it's almost like they were validating that, and so I did it more. And by you telling your friend who's losing weight that they look good, is you equating smaller weights to being attractive. I think it's important to stress that you can be fat and be beautiful. Being fat is not the same as being ugly or being unattractive. And that is a narrative that we really, really need to change, because it's so damaging to kind of equate a body type to being ugly. And that's why a lot of people don't like using the word fat, because fat equals ugly, and that's not the case. And that's why so many of us reclaim the word and call ourselves fat, because it's what we are. It's literally a body type. So I think, yeah, those are my 2 main ones, is really changing the language and how you see fatness and people being bigger, but then also, having those opportunities to broaden the landscape regarding who we hire and who we choose to show in the broader scape.
That's excellent. And I completely agree. And I definitely think for our audience today, your book really is a great example of how we can be better allies, you know, and that's not just to plug the book. I really mean it. And I really felt like while I was reading the book, I was identifying things in myself as well that I was like, these are things that I can change, you know, and I think any kind of book that can do that for you is super important. So we want to thank you for being here with us today. And it was such a pleasure, educational. And now we're going to turn it over to the Q&A section, and we have some great questions here. So let's get started. Our first is from Susan Findlay. And the question is, how did you personally find the confidence to not let others' opinions bring you down?
That's a good question. So for me, I had to reach rock, and I'm not saying that everybody has to reach this point. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But for me, I literally had to reach rock bottom. It got to a point where I was just so tired of hurting my body for the sake of others that it had to stop. It got to a point where I had a really bad eating disorder. I was self-harming. I was just doing so many terrible things to my body. And one day I remember I was at my lowest, and I was really ill because I had been constantly throwing up and just taking all of these dieting pills that were just messing me up inside. And I remember just standing in the mirror, and I was like, so I'm doing all of these terrible things to my body, but my body is still keeping me alive through all of this and keeping me somewhat healthy. And that's when I decided that I had to change, because my body is so resilient regardless of everything that I've been doing. And so for me, it was then and there that I had to make a change and decide, look, I'm going to learn how to love you, because me and my body, me and you, we've only got each other. So we have to make this work. I think in terms of being confident, it was definitely also a case of fake it till you make it. I'm naturally quite introverted, and it took me a long time to make friends. And so for me, it was just a case of, just sometimes being quite loud in groups as well, and almost like putting on a show. And then the more I did it, the more it started to kind of become a part of me as well. And then also just like doing something that you wouldn't normally do. So for me, I was very scared of wearing sleeveless and strapless tops because of my stretch marks on my arms and my shoulders. And one day I was just like, why do I care? Why do I care what that passerby has to say about my stretch marks? I'm never going to see them again. Why am I making myself hot and bothered and wearing all of these layers in summer because of what other people think? The people aren't paying my bills. They're not, their comments have no effect on my life. So I'm fat regardless of what I wear, and that's what people are going to see. So if I'm going to be fat, I might as well be comfortable and wear whatever it is I want to wear, and actually like have some air run through my arms and all of that kind of stuff. So it was just a case of me really noticing that, regardless of what I choose to wear or how I choose to act, people are always going to see my weight first. So there's no point in hiding that. I'm just going to live my best life and be unapologetic in it.
As you should. Our next question is from Adareen Mohammed Noor. And it's a little lighter question. What are your favorite clothing places to shop?
Oh, my favorite clothing places. It's number one, always and forever, ASOS. Absolutely love ASOS Curve. ASOS Curve was the shop that started when I started introducing plus size fashion into my blog. What I love about that line is that they do not separately create clothing for plus size people. Instead, they just extend whatever they have in their main range for us. So basically that means we get to have mini skirts and crop tops and mesh tops and bodycon dresses and all of these amazing things that we didn't have access to when we were younger. The price point is on point. They're current and trendy. And yeah, I just I love that. Like, I'm literally wearing an ASOS top now. I absolutely love them. I also love Nasty Girl. I'm not sure if you guys have that in the States, but we have a store called Nasty Girl. They're also really cool. They've got like a broad range of clothing. If you're into dresses and bodycon things, and like mum jeans and boyfriend jeans, they have a lot of casual wear that is really awesome as well. Oh gosh, what else? River Island is also another store that I really like. They do really nice workwear items, I found. And Universal Standard as well is a great premium plus size brand in the States. They are incredible. They do some incredible formal pieces.
That's great. I love that. Also, we have one question from Kelly Blair that I loved. I thought it was great. The question is, what brings you joy?
Oh, what brings me joy? Jason Momoa brings me joy. He brings me a lot of joy. I am like a big fan of him. Anytime, like I'm sitting in front of my vision board at the moment, and I've got like a picture of him just here. Like, he brings me a lot of joy. Any kind of escapism brings me joy. So for me, I'm a huge fan of fantasy, sci-fi, comic books, and video games, which is why before I renamed my blog, it was called Nerd About Town, because I'm a huge nerd, and I love any kind of escapism. I love video games, anything that can just give my mind a break and focus on something, ethereal and otherworldly. I love that kind of stuff, and I have done since I was a child. So yeah, anything that can sort of take me away and close my brain for a bit, that brings me joy. And children bring me joy as well. I love chatting to kids. Like, if I weren't in this profession, I think I would have been a teacher, or something to do with kids, kindergarten teacher or something like that. Chatting with like my little cousins and things just makes me so happy.
That's amazing. Thank you. It was a great answer. We have one that's very relevant to you as an author. What is the most challenging part of writing in isolation during a pandemic? And that comes from Christina Baptista.
Well, funnily enough, I absolutely loved it, because I cannot write when there are distractions. So when I was writing my book, normally my writing process is I need to have complete silence. I can't have anyone around me. I can't listen to music, because in my old age, as I'm getting older, I've noticed that my attention span, it's just terrible. Like, it's so bad. I get distracted very easily. So in order for me to write, I need to have nothing around me. So actually writing in isolation has been absolutely perfect, because it means I can get stuff done. I don't have people around me. I can write my lists and kind of execute them well. Sometimes if I feel like I need to have a bit of social stuff going on, I write in the park, or I write in my local coffee shop. But aside from that, it's been amazing, because I'm finding that I'm able to concentrate a lot more.
That's great. Also, we have a little ticker here on the side with some questions popping up. And one question came up during the discussion that I think was really interesting. And what was one of the most surprising facts you discovered in your research? We talked about a lot of surprising things already, but was there anything that struck you as being the most surprising while you were researching?
The most surprising? I think there were two things. So one we've already discussed in regards to the eating disorder statistic. That one I found quite surprising. One, because there was even a statistic on it, and two, the fact that it was so high, and it made me want to kind of investigate why this is. Why is there, are there more Black teenagers suffering from bulimia than white teenagers? But yet, when we look on the face of it, it's completely whitewashed. And that kind of I really wanted to know why that was the case. And obviously, for some of it, we know why. It's because a lot of these things are very whitewashed and kind of seen through a white lens. But it really made me want to kind of know more, because I just felt like these are things that should be public knowledge. And then the second thing that I found out that I thought was interesting was, So one was that in the UK, Black women are 5 times more likely to die during childbirth than white women. And that is mostly because of racial bias, unfortunately. That is mostly because there is this assumption that Black women are stronger. And, we've seen from stories such as, Serena Williams and other Black women who have given birth who have been ignored and neglected because people just assume that we have this kind of superhuman strength and we can withstand pain. Therefore, we aren't privy to what am I trying to say? We aren't privy to like painkillers or extra help or extra care and things like that. So that was one thing that really surprised me and actually makes me feel a bit scared. If I were to give birth in future, I would kind of think, would I want to put the life of myself and my, baby in the hands of somebody who assumes that I'm not worthy of the same care because of my skin color? It's quite a frightening statistic.
That is frightening. And I do remember reading that about Serena Williams. And I remember thinking, you have the greatest tennis star, in the world right now in a hospital bed about to give birth. And if she can't be believed, I don't know if I'll be believed.
Who else can? I know, right?
I know. That was wild. I remember that. A simple question for you from a viewer. How do you spell ASOS if they wanted to go shopping at your favorite store?
Oh, ASOS.
ASOS. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's for you. And how long did it take you to write this book? And given that you seem so incredibly open, do you have any reservations sharing this information, in interviews and things like that? You're an open and bubbly person, so I wanted to know, do you ever have shy moments when expressing these kinds of things?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so with the book writing process, I was given 3 months to write it. However, due to miscommunication on my part, I wrote it in 2 months because I didn't know that the 3-month deadline was just a deadline to see where I'd gotten to. I thought it was the final deadline. And me being very work orientated and sort of quite anal when it comes to deadlines, like I hate being late for anything. I really worked every single hour that God gave to write this article. I also had to go on a work trip halfway through, and I was writing while I was on the work trip, and then I broke my ankle out there, and then I had to kind of arrange to come back home, and it was just such a big drama. But it took me two months to write, which was just, I can't even remember the process because it was so stressful, and it was so much information and research to get into that it was a lot. But because a lot of it was my memoirs and things that I had experienced, that part of the writing process was easier to write and very cathartic. I think in regards to the things that I might feel a bit shy about, I think so the dating chapter I don't mind talking about that one. I think when I was writing it, that was definitely the hardest chapter for me to write because that is still something that is ongoing for me in terms of dating. So sometimes there have been times where for instance, I've done like a TV show and they've been quite kind of nitty gritty when it comes to asking me, what's the worst thing a guy has said to you, or what's the worst story that you can think of? And then, I have to kind of retell those stories. And sometimes they can be a bit triggering and a bit traumatic, especially, when it's been like a horrible dating experience. But for the most part, some of them are funny and things like that. But I think anything to do with like dating can be quite difficult and tricky to tread.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer too. I think it's true. Sometimes it's harder to be revelatory than others, but obviously you did a great job today and we were so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights. Again, everyone, please go out and purchase this book. I've read it myself. It's phenomenal. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing everything with us today. And it's been such a pleasure. And please feel free to reach out at any time to Publishers Weekly and let us know how we can help you. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Our pleasure. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie, again. Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. It's been very special. The next Books on Tap Live event is next Wednesday, October 7th, with David Weber and Jacob Holo, who will be discussing their new book, The Valkyrie Protocol. And again, be sure to sign up to receive a reminder of the event at publishersweekly.com/booksontaplive. And we hope you can join us again. It was so nice to have you. Take care.